Financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
Oh no. Sound. I can't hear you. No sound. I know.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Driver issue again. I have to get this resolved. Gosh darn it. Notice I never touched the mute button. Not a mute issue. It's the second time this driver's done it. Hey, anybody work at Blue Yeti? Fix your friggin' drivers. They're starting to tick me off. Let me start all over again, because I had a great friggin' intro going. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Malcontentment Happy Hour. Today is Saturday, January 6, 2021. We are having a special happy hour on Saturday because Thursday we were covering a live event. And then I said, let me bring in my amazing co-host, Jennifer. And that's when I took my eyes finally off the camera to find out that nobody could hear me. Jennifer, how are you doing this evening?
I am pretty good. A little tired, but pretty good. Got some company.
You do? You have some puppy company in your love? Can you tell us a little bit about that possible undocumented malcontentment news worker in your lap?
So her name is Tyla, and she's 13 now. We got her from the Humane Society in Tacoma when she was 10. And she's pretty sweet most of the time, but sometimes she wants to bite your face off because she's a Chihuahua. So, yeah.
Malcontent News loves senior dogs, and we also believe in adopt, don't shop. Yoda, and Yoda will be appearing tonight, so we're going to be having both of our dogs on the show tonight. Yoda will be appearing a little bit later. We adopted Yoda when he was 8 years old, and Yoda is 17, and he is waiting for his grand appearance in the green room. Jennifer, we want to go ahead and we'll get started with the land acknowledgement?
Okay. So Malcontent News comes to you from the occupied lands of Coast Salish peoples. We are grateful to live and work as guests on these lands, a land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. This land acknowledgement is but one small gesture in the ongoing process of working toward repairing and sustaining relations with Coast Salish lands, waters, peoples, and their other than human kin.
Jennifer, it seems like we both are a little mush-mouthed today. I announced the date apparently the show as January 6th, not February 6th. I don't want to relive Insurrection Day, but January 6th may be top of brain because Our show notes are 14 pages long.
Yes,
there are a ton of things in the Insurrection update that has happened. And with that, Jennifer, I think we should just go ahead and jump into our first story.
All right.
And before we dive in and start talking about our first story, there's a couple of things I want to ask you to do. If you want to go ahead and support us, the easiest way to support us is to share this stream. If you're on Twitter or Periscope, you can retweet it out. If you're watching us on Facebook, you can literally share this, whether you share that to a group or share this to your personal wallet. You can also start a watch party. If you are on Twitch or if you're on YouTube, you can be like, hey, come check this out. This is actually pretty cool. I'm learning stuff. It's cool. So, and the other thing that you can do is you can go ahead and spam those hearts. If you are on Twitter, Periscope, or Facebook, by spamming those hearts, yeah, fine. You mess around with the Facebook algorithm and the Twitter and the Periscope algorithm. But it also lets our mods and admins know that you really appreciate all the hard work that they do, as well as Renee, our field producer, Rashi, our editor, and Boomer, our researcher, because everybody here works really hard, and just about every here is only paid in hearts. I wanted to get that little plug in before we kind of start talking about a heavy topic, Jennifer. Mm-hmm. So we covered this on Monday. And what's happened is a lot more information has come out, and there's a fair amount of confusion that is still lingering around this and what's coming out. But the one thing that we have concluded is I'm pretty sure literally nobody is happy about what happened on Sunday, from all the way over to the far left activists, all the way over to the chuds. I don't think there's a single person that right now is happy with what happened in Olympia.
No, absolutely not. It's been a bad situation all around, and I think people are really looking for some answers as to the reality of what's going on or what actually happened.
Yeah, and if our mods and admins, we had provided you a link to a story that we had written that kind of really went in depth, that we researched that out. You can go to malcontentnews.com. Mods and admins, they'll drop a link straight to that story that we can go ahead and cover into that. But let me try to unpack some of what happened of what we've learned what happened on that night. So a group of activists on Saturday bought rooms for 17 rooms to house approximately 35 unhomed individuals at the Red Lion Hotel located in downtown Olympia. On Sunday, as word got out that this was going on Sunday, some reporters came in. They came in at about noon, so about an hour past checkout time. Basically, they reported, Jennifer, that there was about a dozen people just kind of chilling in the lobby of the hotel. Everything looked calm. There was nobody at the front desk. Look, I've stayed at Red Lions before. It's not uncommon to kind of walk up to the front desk and there's no one there, right? Could be in the back room, but everything appeared calm. Activists have said that they were working on paying for the next night and working on collecting those funds. Something between noon and 6 p.m. went totally sideways. And there are a ton of narratives on what did or didn't happen. And it doesn't seem like the truth is getting fully unpacked. What we do know is this, that the hotel staff called 911 at about 6 o'clock at night and said they had locked themselves in a basement room, that armed people had taken over the lobby. There are reports that they were using mattresses for barricades and they had blacked out windows. Now, what we've heard from eyewitnesses, including reporters who were there, nobody reported blacked out windows, for starters. So it's like, I don't know. Yeah. And there are accusations flying back and forth that the hotel staff was either grossly exaggerating the situation in the lobby or completely making it up. Take your pick. This ended up with the SWAT team showing up, them closing off Capitol Avenue, and doing a room-by-room sweep of the hotel. 7 people were told were arrested. that evening, and the unhomed people were thrown out after thinking that they were going to be housed in there. Activists were saying what they were trying to demand was there was FEMA money that has been made available by the Biden administration, but the money's just been made available. And they wanted to force the hand of the Biden administration to continue to pay for those hotel rooms, with activists saying that despite the fact that Olympia is providing trash dumpsters, porta potties, sanitary stations, between the cold, the rain, the mud, and rats in the unhomed encampment that is actually pretty close to this hotel, the situation there was untenable.
Yeah. Yeah. And
there's like a lot to unpack in this story. And again, all of this is in the news story that we have on our website. Then the fallout started coming, Jennifer, because what we've learned since is local homeless advocates, including people who've been working with the unhomed for 10 years, and this is why I say, like, nobody's happy. They're outraged because what they're saying is they have been working with the city, for instance, to stop sweeps. One of the demands of the protesters was no more sweeps in Olympia. Local activists are saying there hasn't been a sweep in Olympia in 2 years. We didn't check the veracity of that. If that's not true, let us know in the comments with a link. Trust but verify. If you can prove it with a link, put it in there because we certainly want to know. But we couldn't find anything to invalidate that claim. So one of the things activists are saying is a bunch of claims and demands were being made, but it's like no one ever talked to us on what people really needed. The second thing that they brought up is there were unhomed people in there that are saying, we didn't know that this was going to be like this direct action standoff thing. We would have never gone in there in the first place. And some of the unhomed that were involved, quite frankly, feel like they were pawns. It's this bigger game. And some of them ended up arrested. There's accusations where activists who were arrested had hired attorneys defending them, while unhomed people had to rely on public defenders. Now, we don't know. We know 3 people are still in jail, but we don't know because there was an update on the story, but we don't know which of the people are still in jail. And there's some people, as I understand it, that are facing some very serious charges.
Yeah. So, I mean, it almost sounds like it was a well-meaning plan that went horribly awry because it lacked perhaps, I don't know, the right kind of organization. I don't know, but it's really problematic to know that there are unhomed people who were potentially pawns in some larger thing at play, because as we saw last week, there were women and young children there. So I think this is something that's extremely important. It's extremely important that we get to the bottom of this and figure out what was going on, and then figure out, how, I guess, better to help those unhomed people that were potentially arrested and are still in jail as a result of this, and to just kind of find out the whole story of what went down and who needs to, I think pay is the wrong kind of word, but who needs to have some kind of repercussion for what actually happened.
And I agree with that, right? Because we look at, say, like the insurrection, right? And we look at people on the political right going, being canceled, right? It's like, no, there's consequences. When you do bad things, there are consequences for bad things. Even if you think that you're doing something for altruistic reasons, if people are like, no, it wasn't altruistic. And if we unpack this on who's unhappy, the people that organize this are very unhappy because they feel that it's all being misrepresented, and that they are being portrayed and painted as bad people that did this. The people that work with the unhomed activists are upset because they're saying that the people that set this up never worked or talked with them about the plan, that people who were in that unhomed encampment not only got arrested, but in the process of getting arrested, lost all of their belongings. And they're going, where's the money and support for those people? Because what they're claiming is they're not getting supported. The unhomed are unhappy because they just feel like they were used in all of this. The community is unhappy because this is being portrayed by the police as, another act of aggressive protest. Amazing, though, in Olympia that they're not applying that same label to the January 6th bum rush of the governor's mansion. Of how many people again arrested for that, Jennifer? How many? One? like way after the fact. And how many people are they looking for? They're looking for what more?
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
saw a police officer getting assaulted live on a TV on multiple channels. It's like, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and give that a pass.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. It's all right. These people have
but
jobs and
the I believe it was either the mayor or someone of the city council called the activists literally domestic terrorists for their actions, and then walked it back. It's really, I was a little hot under the collar. I didn't really mean it.
Yeah, yeah. This whole story is like so terribly problematic in so many ways, but the people who are, suffering from this the most are the ones that were, supposed to be receiving help. And I think that's like the bottom line here is the people that were supposed to be getting help are actually the ones receiving the most serious consequences for what occurred, not just in the context of arrest, but also the continued stereotyping of unhomed people and what that does when you have circumstances like this arise. So this whole kind of like idea that we can do this and then push for money, FEMA money, to continue paying for these and turn it into this kind of like political statement or act while people's lives are hanging in the balance. That's hugely problematic, and I think people need to have a better understanding of what altruism is.
Yeah, and Thurston County officials are saying, look, we applied for that money like almost as soon as it became available, but it's not like I'm paraphrasing. It's not like you go to an ATM machine and put in a card and punch in a code and money. That's what Thurston County is now. I always take a grain of salt when we talk about government officials because we know they like to do the razzle dazzle and all of this too. Yeah. And who controls the narrative? Well, of course they do. But this isn't the only area where unhomed people have been used by pawns. And I'm not directing that, by the way, at protesters, people on the left, or people in direct action. Bellingham did another sweep. They swept the people out from City Hall, and on Friday they swept them a second time. And so you had people in January in a pandemic with our first Arctic, like really oomph of cold is coming next week, and they lost all their belongings for the second time in a week up in Bellingham.
Yeah.
Way to go, Bellingham. Way to go.
That's what I think is most concerning to me is that you have children and families and just anybody really that's out on the streets right now without any possibility of shelter. And we have this huge cold snap coming again this next week. And then you have situations like this that are, portraying unhomed people again in a negative light. And you have to wonder, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. Resources are short, or so they say, even though they're investing tons and tons of money in the quote unquote homeless problem with nothing to show. And so again, we're going to run into a circumstance where it's dangerously cold outside and people have nowhere to go.
And Barb at Ground Level News reported they did a abatement. That's apparently what they call it in Utah. It's a lovely word for sweep, abatement. They did an abatement at Camp Last Hope. They did put up notices, and we've been following the story, Malcontent News. We've been sharing a ton of Barb streams. We've been trying to amplify the voices out of Salt Lake City because they don't get a lot of coverage there. And we love the work that Barb does, and not just as a streamer, but her activism work that she's been doing with the unhomed community there. You think about being unhomed in Olympia or Seattle or Bellingham in January. Try Salt Lake City on for size in January.
Yeah.
And they came in after agreeing. First, they put up notices for the sweep. Then it was announced that activists in Salt Lake City had come to an agreement that they would find places for everyone, and they would do like this slow wind down of camp. I say slow in the sense they're not going to come out and sweep everybody out in an hour. And when they couldn't find places for everybody, they just went ahead and swept the place anyway.
Yeah, I know. And I think, we talk a lot about these continued sweeps and the stigma surrounding people that are unhomed, but this stigma and authorities are reliant upon this continued narrative that reinforces these stereotypes because it allows for the justification of things like sweeps and the arresting of unhomed people and the thrashing of belongings and all of these things. And so we see this throughout history with various, populations. And so I think like the way you start to dismantle this is by forcibly disrupting these stereotypes and calling them out when you see them, and finding different ways to talk about this. So it becomes normalized to not reinforce those stereotypes and allow for that justification.
Yeah, Malcontent Liberty is telling us that at Bellingham, after the police did the sweeps and Unhome were trying to go and find beds, there were no beds for them up there. So they were literally just on the street after they got their stuff thrown out. Mm-hmm. And there's another comment down there in California at Venice Beach. Look, if I had to be unhomed, I have to admit, like that would be on my A list. And they do a very similar tactic apparently there that they do in Seattle, which I call it whack-a-mole, right? We're going to go ahead and clear this encampment out, but they're just going to convalesce somewhere else. And of course, we've seen that, great. Cal Anderson looks great. Problem solved. You didn't solve anything.
No, it's not being solved. It's just being like swept under a rug or have a Band-Aid stuck over the top of it. So it assuages, any of these public concerns people have about their safety in the context or in relation to, these unhomed people that have all these issues because these stereotypes are continuing to be tossed around. So again, to start dismantling this, we need to be more aggressive in taking apart these stereotypes and not letting them be normalized so they're used as justification to continue this kind of stuff.
Yeah, the biggest thing I would say, and I'll close on this, Jennifer, to the activist community, do not let the failures of federal, state, county, and local officials fall at the feet of the activist community for the unhomed and for Black Lives Matter and for Antifa protesters. Because you're just trying to clean up their mess. Like in Seattle, what we've seen, Jennifer, is many of the people that were involved, say, in protest movements 3 or 4 months ago have moved on, a lot of them, into homeless advocacy and mutual aid, because that is where the greatest need is. And we know, because we had this story that we reported on that was also in the Seattle Times, that the Seattle Police Department were telling unhomed people, hey, go over there, there's mutual aid. And then literally tearing down the mutual aid tents after sending the unhomed people there.
Yeah, no, and I think this is partially why, and I'm going to say it again, why Colleen Echo Hawk is such an appealing candidate for mayor for Seattle, because of all of the work and experience she has in homeless advocacy. So I think she's an interesting candidate to keep an eye on as we move closer to that.
And I agree with that. And Jennifer, I don't know if you saw this in the comments. More of our emotes are on. I'm seeing some of our Twitch emotes in there. I'm seeing the M News emote. So even though I only got the email that yours was approved, it looks like more of the emotes have been approved. So if you're on Twitch, I think if you become a subscriber, you get access to some cool emotes that we had designed by Rosa. And Rosa, thank you so much. Jennifer, we're going to do a brief pause for the cause, and I think we'll go to the next section. Hi, Malcontents. I'm David, the Malcontent, and I'd like to talk to you for a moment about supporting independent media. When you support us, you help us bring the before, during, and after. You help us defend the First Amendment. You help us amplify BIPOC and LGBTQIA voices, and you help us hold leaderships at a local, state, and federal level accountable. None of this would be possible without support by viewers just like you. When you become a patron for as little as $5 a month, you help buy technology, safety equipment, and help cover travel expenses so that we can continue to bring you news that you trust. If you can't become a patron, you can do a one-time donation on Venmo, and your dollars will go to the exact same causes. With your continued support, we can continue to amplify BIPOC and LGBTQIA voices while showing the truth on what is happening in the world around us. Once again, thank you. All right, Malcontents, it's that time again where Jennifer and I are going to do Malcontented Minutes. Malcontented Minutes is our speed round for news where we do 10 stories in about 20 to 25 minutes. Now, mods and admins, this is the time. You can go ahead and drop the link. What link? You get to control the news because we have a poll that's been put up. And on that poll are the 10 stories that Jennifer and I are going to do. You get to vote in that poll and pick the story that we'll go more in depth in at the end of the show. So, of course, voting right now is pointless because we haven't even revealed story number one. So you might want to probably wait toward the end, and then we hold off announcing what the story is until we get to the arrests in the Insurrection update. And Jennifer, we got a lot of funky arrests we're going to be talking about tonight. It's like the best part of the show. Are we ready to do this?
Oh, let's do it.
All right. Let's do it. We do that, we do that, and we do that. All right, here we go. We're rolling. Story number one. We're back to the town of Hazeldale, Washington, where police have shot another black man under questionable circumstances for the second time in 3 months. There are literally no details that have been released at the traffic stop that went wrong involving 30-year-old Genoa Donald, I hope I'm pronouncing his first name correctly. Thank you for your patience if I got it wrong, of Vancouver, Washington. 4 officers were involved, with one reportedly firing their gun. Genoa is reported to be brain dead and on life support with no hope for a meaningful recovery. His family has asked that the NAACP, or through the NAACP, that there not be any protests. In October, Kevin Peterson Jr. was killed by a drug task force where multiple videos shot have now raised serious questions about the police account version of events. Both shootings are now under independent investigation in accordance with Washington I-940.
Yeah.
Jennifer, go ahead and unpack this for us.
So we were talking a little bit about, before the show got started, about what kind of demographic tends to populate that particular area. And I was telling you my oldest child actually lives down there, and I lived down there for some time when I worked with racehorses. It is a heavily white, fairly conservative area. In September, I went down to visit a friend in that area. There was a huge Trump rally. There's a lot of far right leaning people there. So this is extremely problematic, and I am very interested. We can't make too many assumptions right now because we don't have that much information, but it does not sound promising, and I'm interested to kind of watch and see what comes out in the next few days.
Yeah, one of the things that jumps out at me, Jennifer, is that most police officers will go through their entire career without pulling their service revolver.
Yeah.
2 police shootings essentially fatal in 3 months in a relatively small community. All right, that's time on that. Jennifer, we'll go ahead and start the clock, and you've got story number 2.
All right. So in the last week, a Louisiana library got a grant for a voting rights program, but its board, who's already kind of been called into question by like the ACLU, rejected the money, started citing far left content. So what happened is Teresa Elberson, who was a library, put in for this small grant of $2,700 to purchase copies of 2 books on Black history and civil rights, and to hire a pair of Black college professors to lead community discussions on the titles. So what it was doing is talking about this kind of ongoing struggle for voting rights. And so it's supposed to like open up larger dialogue about Black history and civil rights more broadly. But the board was like, no, we're trying to reinstall library neutrality and not, churn out information or support things that are too far left or too far right. Well, this has been problematic in the past because the ACLU of Louisiana has already come down on this board for, refusing to or voting against having what they call like drag queen story time. Because, and I quote, the board said, when drag queens lead children's story time, a lot of hugs and controversy follow. So the librarian that received the grant and wanted to implement this program has resigned, and the board again is in trouble with the ACLU because they're basically trying to guise their own racism as neutrality.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. And the other thing is you bring up the issue of transphobia that's going on there. That is a topic that I am actually, Jennifer, you know, we talked about it before the show, that I am really steamed about. Yep. And we're going to close talking about transphobia tonight. Thank you for bringing us that story. Mm-hmm. Do better, Louisiana.
Yeah.
All right, our next one takes us to story number 3. And story number 3, Chicago restaurateur Robert Magiette, I hope I'm saying your name, Robert, and thank you for your patience if I'm not, was driving his car when he saw a lone tamale vendor shivering in the brutal January cold of Chicago. He made an impulse decision, made an offer that she couldn't refuse. He bought out her entire inventory of tamales right there on the spot. And then he got another idea, and he called out on social if anybody knew about any other tamale vendors that were out there that he could buy out. And the leads flooded in. So not only did he buy out the daily inventory of multiple tamale vendors and leave them, by all reports, a generous tip, but he then donated those tamales to the unhomed population in Chicago. He now plans to continue to do these tamale runs through the rest of the winter months. And a similar plan has now popped up, Jennifer, to do it for pizza.
Yeah, take note, people. That's called altruism. There's nobody being used as a political pawn. People are actually benefiting from somebody else's generosity without some kind of expectation in return. That's altruism. That is an absolutely wonderful feel-good story. I wish more people would do things like that. The benefits to the people who are out there, you know, trying to sell their products in a kind of harsh winter environment, and also people who are having to deal with that environment as unhomed populations and getting, you know, food out of that. Those are both really great things.
Yeah, it is a really great story. It makes me think of the ending of the movie Scrooge, where he was like, I get it now. You could just get a sandwich and go here, right? It was this whole, there was no strings attached. It was not just do something nice. And It is a great story. Jennifer, you can take story number 4.
All right. So locally, a Seattle student is helping seniors book vaccine appointments and encouraging others to do the same. 17-year-old Aaron Jaff of Lakeside School in Seattle has been using his extra time, as King 5 reported, to help book many appointments for seniors in his life who have struggled to navigate the complicated process online, because so much of this booking the appointments is online. And he was actually even able to help a 97-year-old World War II veteran booking an appointment, because the process, you know, you need to have at least a little bit of technological savvy to navigate the site to be able to book the online appointment, which of course is, you know, sometimes a struggle for people our age, David, let alone people much older. So he is actually part of the Lakeside Crew team, and they call the project the Vaccine Crew because they're actually really working on those ethics that supportive crew brings. So this is actually a kind of a nice instance of this kind of like privilege being used for a good cause to help seniors get their COVID vaccine appointments.
This is a great story, and one of the things that we'll have in our COVID-5 Fast Facts is we're going to be talking about the vaccination situation in the state of Washington. We talked about it on Monday, and we're going to have to talk about it again here on Saturday. So I don't want to kind of get ahead of ourselves on that. What do you mean people our age? What are you saying, Jennifer?
Okay, we're not spring chickens. Okay, David, I've had to come to the realization that I'm in my 40s and like 15 years away from 60. It's not. So
one of the things that jumps out at me on this, Jennifer, and I don't want to get ahead and you know reveal the punchline, but part of what people have to do is provide their driver's licenses, and the state of Washington did not do a good job with PII and the unemployment security. And so with that, we're at time, and if you want us to talk more about it, you can vote for that story. And just reminder that we have the polls. Mods, admins, if you could drop the link maybe one more time in there for the polls. just so people to get it. And again, you may want to wait to the end because you may hear another story and go, damn, I wish I voted for that one. All right, so with that, we're going to go to story number 5. And story number 5, Jennifer, comes with a visual.
Oh, God.
A Florida man with a Florida tattoo on his face was arrested in Florida after calling 911 multiple times, saying he needed a ride. That is not a henna tattoo. 22-year-old Matthew Latham of Hudson, Florida, called 911 4 times asking for a ride home. On the first call, Latham told 911, I fucked up.
This is written.
I'm trying to find a fucking ride home. By the 4th call, 911 operators kept him on the phone with until an officer arrived 6 minutes later. Pasco County Sheriff's deputies arrested the man and gave him a ride to jail for misuse of the 911 system and marijuana possession, because apparently marijuana is still illegal in Florida. I have no ill will that the TV show Live PD is gone, but damn it, this was Pasco County. Jennifer, this would have made fabulous TV.
I'm still stuck on that Florida tattoo in the middle of his forehead. That's a lot. Yeah. What was in that weed is what I want to know. That made him feel it necessary to call 911 for a ride rather than like Uber. That is such a Florida story. Like, I mean, you literally could not make it up.
Power grid was shut off by Dickless here.
They caused an explosion.
Is this true?
Yes, it's true.
All right, Jennifer, let's go ahead. We'll pull you up, and you can start story number 6.
Oh, this is kind of like cheesy gossip celebrity stuff, but because A-Rod used to play for the Mariners, it has a little bit of a local connection. So A-Rod is in the midst of a controversy a little bit with a reality TV star. Is denying that he actually cheated on J-Lo, Jennifer Lopez, with a Southern Charm, is the name of the show. I've never seen it. Star Madison LaCroix, who claims she's been inconsistently communicating with the engaged baseball icon. Now, LaCroix has already made news because she had a relationship with Jay Cutler, who is a mediocre quarterback. He is. While he had just recently separated from his wife, or maybe they were still kind of at the tail end of their marriage. So this is still kind of unfolding. Of course, A-Rod and J-Lo are showing some solidarity publicly, but there are, transcripts of conversations, and there have been phone calls, and it just basically goes to show that you can look like J-Lo and your fiance, boyfriend, whatever, might still be looking elsewhere.
So here's my views on A-Fraud, which just tell you right out of the gate my views on A-Fraud. First of all, he screwed over the Mariners, and I had just moved to the city here, and I wasn't much of a fan at that time, but I really wanted to see the Mariners destroy the Yankees, and the Mariners friggin' choked, and I sat in the stands, and I watched that horror of playoff games when all of that went down. Then he went to the Rangers on that ridiculous deal and literally bankrupt that team. Thank you, George W. Bush, for running that one so well. And actually, W wasn't president at the time that happened, but he had already fucked up the team beyond repair prior to that happening. Yeah. And then he went to the Yankees, where we had steroids and herpes and him sleeping with everybody, and he's just ick.
Yeah, he is ick. And this is just like, I don't care. I mean, whatever, but it's not, there's usually not innocuous or benign intent behind contacting another woman, and especially an attractive reality star woman, while you're engaged to what purpose is there behind that communication? Was he offering her advice on fame and celebrity? So I'm just like, whatever. You can
maybe he was getting relationship advice from a certain Texas police chief who is now in jail.
Yes.
And Tiger Woods. Doesn't he hang out with Tiger Woods? I think he does.
Yes.
All right, we're going to go ahead to story number 7. Florida. You're the gift that keeps on giving. Apparently, it isn't that hard to fire a police officer if misconduct involves another police officer, Jennifer. Then it could happen real quick. David Hernandez of Longwood, he said Longwood, Florida, was fired after mocking a fellow officer about her fears of catching COVID, hugging her against her will, and touching her personal belongings.
Ugh.
An internal investigation found that Hernandez was, try to contain yourself here, Jennifer, not fully forthcoming and not truthful, really, in his statements on the interaction with the other officer. Hernandez is really screwed up, Jennifer, because he's had 16 years on the force. He was just 4 years away from that pension money train. The police union, interestingly, has no comment on the ongoing arbitration. The woman officer involved elected not to press charges against Hernandez. You could get to unpack this shit show. It's all you.
First of all, some guy hugging me against my will, I don't care if you're a coworker or not, you're going to get a knee to the groin. Second, that's both borderline harassment and sexual harassment. Third, I shared an article with you guys in our news chat earlier this week about the ways in which women in predominantly male-dominated careers are still very much grappling with sexual harassment of various forms, because men don't like their presence there. And this kind of reeks of that. And her kind of willingness to not press charges may also be out of fear for repercussion.
Well, I bet I'm willing to bet a month of Sunday of paychecks that she is already dealing with repercussions. And we will probably never know, but I'd be surprised if she is with that police force 12 months from now.
Yeah, exactly.
And with that, Jennifer, you could take us to story number 8.
All right. Story number 8. So in some kind of good news, Biden is calling for expanded efforts to protect the LGBTQIA rights globally. And he basically signed a memorandum, which is, legally just for show. It doesn't really have any power, but it's wanting to expand protections for the rights of LGBTQIA people worldwide, including potentially through the use of financial sanctions. Hit them where it hurts, right in the pocketbook, right? He says, quote, all human beings should be treated with respect and dignity and should be able to live without fear no matter who they are or whom they love. And this is building on a 2011 directive issued when Biden was serving as vice president. It goes on to say, quote, the United States belongs to the forefront of this struggle, speaking out and standing strong for our most dearly held values. Again, it's largely symbolic. But it's a campaign that he pledged, a campaign promise to pass LGBTQIA rights legislation, known as the Equality Act, in the first 100 days of his administration, and to make this a top priority. The memo also directs U.S. agencies working abroad to work harder to combat the criminalization by foreign governments of LGBTQIA status or conduct, and directs the State Department to include anti-LGBTQIA violence, discrimination, and laws in its annual human rights report.
We had talked about this, I think, right when you had just started on the show, that one of the things that I had predicted is where former President Donald Trump, by the way, I showed him the respect as a journalist you're supposed to show him by saying former President Donald Trump and not just Cheeto Jesus or something like that. But former President Donald Trump basically legislated by executive order. And I think when you first came on board, one of the things I was saying is that there's really nothing to prevent Joe Biden from coming in and erasing most of the Trump legacy with a stroke of a pen. And that's basically what Joe Biden's done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I was reading something earlier today before we came on about how, in comparison to his predecessors, the amount of executive orders he's issued in his first few days, and they're basically all trying to undo some of these really problematic things that Trump enacted during his presidency.
There's more I want to say, but we're gonna hold true to this. If you want us to keep going on this story, then you could vote, but you should. We got 2 more, so you should wait to hear what those 2 are. And with that, we're going to go to story number 9. New York State has repealed a 1970 law that was created as an anti-prostitution measure that was heavily abused, particularly by the New York City Police Department. The measure became known as Walking While Trans Law, originally passed to prevent loitering for the solicitation of prostitution, more commonly known by the derogatory term street walking. The vaguely written law was used by New York City police officers for decades to target minorities and especially the transgender community. With officers having no way of knowing what an actual conversation was going on, people were basically arrested for essentially looking the part, with transgender men particularly targeted. Because of discrimination, an inordinate number of transgender people have to turn to sex work because they can't find regular work. The repeal of the law is being hailed as a victory for the BIPOC and the LGBTQIA community, while New York officials issued a terse memo to officers to stop targeting people based on the law. HBO fans may remember the documentary series Hookers at the Point. Jennifer never really saw New York City police down there cracking down on that loitering law. You get to unpack this one.
So I'm actually going to plug a really great book written by a historian named George Chauncey, and it's called Gay New York, Gender, Urban Culture, and the Making of the Gay Male World, 1890 to 1940. It's a fantastic book. He goes through and details the longer history of all this. And like I said, it's totally worth the read, fantastically well-researched, well-written book about this kind of history in New York over the course of 50 years. So yeah, it's particularly interesting that they're, just kind of now doing away with this, because this is stuff that's been going on for more than a century. I mean, Chauncey talks about it in his book. So the fact that, this consistent targeting of trans people is still an ongoing problem just shows how ingrained gender stereotypes are in our society, and how people are so attached to them and just kind of very unwilling to do away with them, because there are so many people, particularly those of a certain age and I guess racial demographic, that fear change. I don't know.
I'm going to talk about it more at the end of the show, as you know.
Yes.
And with that, Jennifer, you get to do the final story. And I would really say, as you're listening to this story, the polls are open. We're not going to close them until we get to the tail end of the insurrection update, right before we get to arrests. That's when, so you got plenty of time to vote. So with that, Jennifer, you can go ahead. The clock is operating.
So, of course, tomorrow is the Super Bowl, and it is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the Kansas City Chiefs. But a Native American rights group is planning a protest on Sunday, urging the Kansas City Chiefs to retire the team's name and stop fans from using an in-game tomahawk chop ahead of the Super Bowl in Tampa. So Alicia Norris is the co-founder of the Florida Indigenous Rights and Environmental Equality. It's called FIRE with 2 E's, and is one of the people leading the demonstration set to take place near Raymond James Stadium, where the Chiefs will play the Bucks for the championship. And so she says, quote, "The indigenous people of this land have already had a mass genocide approach with regard to their culture and its way of living." And she goes on to say, "And when you further dehumanize them and objectify them, it just kind of falls in line with the extinction of who they are." So a historian by the name of Patrick Wolf wrote this amazing article called Settler Colonialism and the Elimination of the Native, and he talks about the multiple ways in which genocide was committed against Native peoples by white settlers. And it's not just physical erasure, it is cultural. And this is part of what they're arguing, is this is part of that cultural erasure. And it reinforces, again, problematic stereotypes that justify the consistent erasure and just kind of like brushing aside of Native peoples.
Yeah, whenever we and I'm sure we'll see some comments. If not tonight, we will probably see it after the show for sure. Afterwards, right, with people going, well, what about the Seminoles? And what about the Blackhawks? And what about the Seahawks, right? And it's like, the Seahawks worked with the natives people when they came up with the iconography and got their blessing and approval. The Seminoles are supported by the Seminole, right? The Blackhawks, it's a little more complicated, but the nations that are involved with that are, approve of the mascot and the story behind it. And there is like this legitimate, this is an honor and out of respect. What the Chiefs are doing, this kind of equivalent thing of the tomahawk chop, right, where they do this, and like, I was reading this story about as somebody who was a Native American in that area, was that, well, what's the chant? It's like, it's nonsense. No, like, come on, let me into the secret. What's the chant? And like, the person was ready to kill it's like, it's nonsense.
Yeah, it's made up. It's homogenizing. It's like all Native people rode horses and wear headdresses. No, they didn't. All Native peoples were warriors and had tomahawks and shot bows and arrows. No, they didn't. It's this very homogenizing effect that continues to perpetuate these ongoing problematic and harmful stereotypes that for some reason white people, particularly white men, do not want to let go of.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Malcontents, you could go ahead and vote for your favorite story, and Jennifer and I will work. Oh, that was beautiful. It bounced right off the lens. I finally got one.
Yes.
Great moment in Jewish sports history.
Okay.
And you get to pick the story that you like the most. We're going to do a little pause for the cause, and then we're going to go into our next segment.
Black Coffee is a hub for communities and a hub for meeting people, making friends, and understanding.
What Black Coffee is to me is a place to actually call home, a place where Black youth will feel welcomed, where Black families will come and feel like they're at home.
What we're trying to build is more than just coffee. Community is something that we do naturally. We know who's in the community, we know what the deficits are, and we're trying to fix that. We want to bring people together.
My hope is that the phrase grounded in excellence shows up everywhere and that it becomes a movement.
I'm looking forward to hanging out at Black Coffee with my friends and feeling safe.
Black coffee to me means opportunity for people like me and my other friends and family to come here and do homework safely and hang out and stuff like that.
That is happening. It is happening.
Black Coffee Northwest is located in Shoreline, Washington on Highway 99. They're on the west side of the highway. They're open Monday through Saturday, so they won't be open tomorrow. They have been shifting their hours around, so I always tell people, look on the Facebook page or look on their website, because we don't want to have people go up there and then leave with tears in their eyes because they're closed. Jennifer, they have amazing coffee, and of course, I got to call it out. Get the potato scone.
Yes. This also seems like a good time for us to do our kind of shout out to Black History Month.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to, you can go right ahead.
Yeah, so this week I'm sharing, and the mods, our wonderful mods, have the link to this that they're going to share with you in the comments. And it's part of the Seattle Civil Rights and Labor History Project, and it's called the Seattle Black Panther Party History and Memory Project. And it's just this kind of really great collection of video interviews, photos, news coverage, congressional hearings, bulletins, like a brief history, and a film. And it's really informative and gives you like a very nuanced understanding of the things the Black Panther Party were doing in Seattle and their longer history. I had a chance to listen to Aaron Dixon speak on the UW campus about 5 years ago when he came out with his book, and it was a really powerful and like very moving dialogue. So I urge you guys to take a look at all of this, watch some of the interviews, go through the news coverage, and learn a little bit more about the Black Panther Party, because a lot of times they're often portrayed in a negative light as antithetical to what MLK stood for, when it's really not. And they did a lot of really great things for the community. So I hope this is a very useful resource for some of you, and you got something good out of it.
Jennifer, thank you so much for sharing that. Really appreciate you bringing that to us. And I really like what you're doing for us in Black History Month. If you're not familiar, we had talked about this on Monday, because that was February 1st. Jennifer and I both felt that as white allies, we have no business standing up here and doing educational pieces around Black History Month, because we're not Black. And so what we're doing instead is highlighting pieces that you can go out and watch, read, learn from, to learn more about Black history on your own. Everybody say hi to Yoda. Yoda, say hi to everybody. And we're going to go ahead and roll to the next segment. Jennifer, we're going to go ahead and just dive right into COVID-5 fast facts because we got to move fast.
Yes.
Because we still have a huge insurrection update to go, and I don't know how 53 minutes has already gone by. And with that, I'm going to just jump into it.
Okay.
A rural county in Georgia had their COVID vaccination clinic shut down with no warning by the state. They were vaccinating teachers and school officials to support the reopening of their school district. The county was vaccinating the staff out of turn based on the guidelines that were set up by the state of Georgia. And that resulted in the state moving in, confiscating all doses of the vaccine and shutting down the clinic. The clinic was just given a small supply for doses to support several hundred people who would already have had their first doses in the clinic. They will not get any more doses for 6 months. And caught in this mess includes those in those key populations which were supposed to get vaccinated, who have since had their appointments canceled.
What a mess. What is going on down there? The whole vaccine rollouts, in its entirety has been a hot mess based on the actions, or inaction effectively of the previous administration. But yeah, this is not pretty. I think we're going to continue to see stuff like this. We're going to continue to see ongoing resistance to vaccination, particularly in rural areas. This is just not a good thing.
No, it's not. And one of the things that I feel about people are already not trusting the government on this. People are already not trusting the vaccine. How does this action, wrapped in the warm, fuzzy blanket of, hi, I'm the government, I'm here to help you, because that's basically the warm blanket they've wrapped themselves in. I'm sorry. I don't mean to startle you. Blind pug moment there. He's just like, I saw the hand. I got it. It's all right, man. Anyway, Jennifer, you can take us to story number 2.
Bizarre decision to own the libs. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds issued an emergency order ending all mask-wearing requirements and allowing bars and restaurants to open at full capacity. The order takes effect on Sunday, just in time for the Super Bowl. Iowa, which was off to a great start during the initial COVID outbreak, is 47th in the country for vaccinations and has had over 5,000 deaths. Go Iowa!
So in other words, they got more deaths in the state of Washington. And who was first across the finish line or the first across the starting line for all this? Oh, that's right, we were.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that are scratching their heads over this decision, including people in Iowa and the timing around it.
Yeah, and it all boils down to capitalism and money and the economy is what it is.
Well, and Kim Reynolds was a huge Trump supporter.
Yes.
So
yeah,
gotta own those libs.
That's right.
All right, I'm going to go to the next story here. This is a challenge holding a pug, by the way, everybody. The Supreme Court has remained consistent in their rulings on religious services and COVID, finding against the state of California and their ban on indoor church services for areas in the state's purple zones. Purple! I like purple zones. We're in a purple zone. The ruling allows indoor services, however, at only 25% capacity and with no singing or chanting allowed. Church officials were trying to get the full ban lifted to allow singing, chanting, and to go to 100% capacity. This is mirrored, Jennifer, other Supreme Court decisions on identical cases that have voted along the 6-3 line.
Yeah. Man, churches crack me up because they just think they ought to be exempt from any kind of regulation, regardless. I'm going to save my religious commentary here. But yeah, I don't know. I think California is one of those places where they're really, really suffering right now. I mean, funeral homes are beyond capacity. They don't know how to really kind of deal or grapple with what's going on. And this just, even at 25%, seems like a poor choice.
And you can go ahead and do our next story.
Worship via Zoom. God will still love you. If Washington State is a good example of how to fight COVID, it sure hasn't been a good example on how to roll out the vaccine. Facebook groups are popping up filled with confusing anger and disappointment and trying to book appointments for the vaccine. It isn't all the fault of Washington, as vaccine shortages still plague the nation, but among the barriers being faced is requirements to sign up online and provide personal identifiable information, such as the front and back of a driver's license. Steps that are confusing at best for the first recipients, which are mostly elderly and many who lack the technology to complete the task. Others have complained that by the time they complete the required steps to prove their need, the slot has disappeared on them. And this goes back to the story that we talked about in our Malcontentment minutes is, get more people like this student who are helping senior citizens sign up for these very important vaccinations.
Do better, Washington. That's all I can say. Do better. If you vote in the poll, it's a story we can dive into a little bit more. I know we've kind of touched on it twice tonight, but two different angles. But please vote in the poll and let us know what story you want us to go deeper on. All right, we got our last piece in our COVID Fast Five. Multiple experts and officials are deeply concerned that Super Bowl Sunday will turn into Super Spreader Sunday, Iowa. There have been multiple appeals for people to forget the party and the bars, especially with the South African and UK variants identified in the United States and in community spread on both coasts. The South African variant is of particular concern as it seems to target younger victims with worse symptoms. The country is just starting to get a handle on the current surge, with hospitalizations and new cases continuing to drop. There's no need for celebration, however, because at our current pace of vaccination, Jennifer, we'll have herd immunity in 7 years.
Maybe. I mean, that's if people still, I feel like we're just going to get stuck in this cycle because people don't want to wear masks, and you have people like the governor of Iowa are like, screw it, just forgo all of that stuff. And we're just going to keep continuing to have the resistance to the vaccine, weird government intervention, the poor rollout, the requirements to get a vaccine. It's a hot mess. That's the only way to describe it.
And just a reminder, April 20th, we're going to hold Joe Biden's feet to the fire.
Yep.
April 20th, Papa Joe, we're going to hold you accountable on that promise. And with that, I think we're just going to roll right into the insurrection update.
Oh boy, there's a lot.
All right, Malcontent, it's Jennifer and I's favorite part of the show. It's the insurrection update. If you haven't voted in our poll on which story you want us in Malcontented Minutes to go deeper, mods and admins will drop the link again. Please go ahead and go over there and vote and let us know. Mods and admins, right before we get to the arrest segment, we will go ahead and ask you to tell us what's going on. And Malcontent, that's all insurrection update.
Yeah. There's a lot of stupid people in the world.
Holy shit!
If you're hearing that noise, Yoda, even though he is blind, has figured out that if he tweaks the door stopper over and over again, it goes brrr and it gets my attention. I may have to hit the technical difficulties button for a minute to go get Yoda, who is now demanding out of the so-called green room.
That's so cute.
Jennifer, you went last, so I'm going to go first.
All right.
Let's go ahead. This is a good time also to remind you, spam those hearts, and let the mods and admins know you appreciate the great work that they're doing. We're going to start with Rep. Marjorie Greene, who's had one hell of a week. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell blasted Marjorie Taylor Greene on Monday night. So this was after we had finished our show on Monday, as House Republicans considered censuring her. McConnell, appearing to try and defend the crumbling remains of the old school GOP, stated her embrace of loony lies and conspiracies is a cancer for the Republican Party. I can't do that in the Mitch McConnell turtle voice with a straight face.
The word loony, that cracks me up. Loony. Makes it sound almost like it's entertaining, like Looney Tunes. It's not entertaining. It's about shit crazy and dangerous. All right, moving on. Senator Mittens Romney, who occasionally grows a microspine, also went after MTG on Tuesday, saying, quote, I think we should have nothing to do with Marjorie Taylor Greene and think we should repudiate the things she said and move away from her. Our Big Ten is not large enough to both accommodate conservatives and kooks, end quote. The other 96% of seated Republican senators had nothing more to add.
It's just so gross.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about Mittens, he like only half means it, right? He probably is going to vote to acquit Trump. I would bet money on that. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy tried to play both sides on this ongoing Marjorie Taylor Greene train wreck of the week, entertaining stripping Liz Cheney of her committee seats, the third highest ranking Republican in the House, and considering the same for MTG. Jennifer, do you remember a time when the name Cheney was associated with the most evil Republicans in the Republican Party? When on earth did the Cheneys become sane?
Apparently during the Trump era.
The word is McCarthy criticized MTG and said that she has to hold herself to a, I quote, unquote, higher standard. In the end, both Cheney and Greene kept their committee seats, but only one of them was still on committees after Friday.
Mm-hmm. And it wasn't Greene. Yeah, and Greene was interesting too because she just basically gave the I'm sorry you feel that way of apologies about her behavior. Moving on, freshman Senator Tommy Tuberville, this name sounds like a weird cartoon character, of Alabama, who has raised many eyebrows as his name continues to come up in the planning of the insurrection, raised more eyebrows when he had no comment about MTG when asked. The no comment in itself didn't raise his eyebrows in his right. It was his reason, which he blamed on bad weather and not keeping up on current headlines. Way to go, Alabama, on replacing a qualified individual with someone who doesn't even know the three branches of government or how to use the Google.
He's never heard of weather.com, apparently, Jennifer, either.
The Google.
The weather? This guy was a football coach. I mean, I get he's a football coach in Alabama, but he's a football coach. He didn't look at the weather forecast before a game. Oh, there's going to be rains and thunderstorms this game here. We're going to have to pull out the old 23 skidoo play on this one.
I'm sorry, I can't comment on her because of the weather. Like, wow. Okay.
We have so much MTG. She sucked so much oxygen out of the room last week. It's ridiculous. Like, this just keeps peeling the onion. Cue the false moral equivalency. Representative Nancy Mace of South Carolina, who in her first couple of weeks in Congress looked like she was sane and rational, went on the defensive to protect MTG, saying there are crazies on both sides. And when she was talking about crazies on both sides on Tuesday, she then doubled down on that statement and called out AOC's accounts of events during the insurrection, stating they were fabrications, stating how her office is in the same part of the Capitol complex on the same hallway as AOC's, and that her account of being fearful is just all BS. But Jennifer, there's one problem. She posted on Twitter and in a news article about barricading herself in her office and sleeping in the Capitol overnight. Go ahead. I pulled up Florida Man by accident. There we go. We'll pull this up here.
That'll haunt me.
That is not a picture of Nancy Mace.
Stop.
Nor somebody associated with Nancy Mace. But I got to pull up Florida Man again.
God.
So here's the tweet. As a matter of fact, if you look at Rep Mace's Twitter for the week of the insurrection, it is littered with first-person accounts of her being in total fear, feeling helpless, and condemning the actions of the insurrectionists. She also called out then-President Trump for his delay in moving flags to half-mast for Officer Sicknick. She even went on MSNBC to give her account of fear of what happened. So somebody has clearly gotten, like, it's like the member berries of South Park, like, blah!
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a whole theory about this, but I'll save it. And even more false moral equivalency, GOP House leaders put out a measure to strip MTG of her committee seats with a poison pill attached. The Democratic majority would also have to strip Ilhan Omar of her seats. Omar has stirred some controversy in her freshman year as congressperson over some content she has made, but these were taken out of context and were reported on that years ago, and these have to refer to her support of Palestine and Palestinian people and the ways in which they are treated by Israel.
Yeah, there's a particular statement that she had made when she was a freshman congresswoman in her very early months. And it was this classic, we're just going to play the little bit of the clip and then we're going to run with it. And they didn't play the before and they didn't play the after. When you played it in full context, you were like, and I say this as someone who's a Jewish faith, right? It was like, it's a little icky, but it's nowhere near as icky as you're portraying it. And it's not anti-Semitic. And my anti-Semitic radar is on. I don't care who you are, left, right, in between. If you're anti-Semitic, you're going down. I'm going to call you out. And the mods and admins know that. Like, that is one of like the standing rules. If there's anything even smells anti-Semitic, banhammer. There is no vacations or warnings. So, Jennifer, yeah. I got to hit technical difficulties for a minute because he's upping the ante.
Go get Yoda. Oh.
He looks very smug. I won.
So very happy though. He's adorable.
He looks very happy. I won. I'm on TV. See if I bring you on the show again.
Oh.
That's right. Sneeze all over the control panel again. All right, Jennifer, it's your turn. I get to do this one-handed now.
Oh, okay. With MTG sucking all of the air out of the room and keeping a fair amount of attention off of former President Trump and his looming impeachment trial, the motion to remove both of them didn't pass. So House Democrats and 11 Republicans voted to remove MTG on Friday from her committee assignments, including one in education, where she could teach the youth about the Jewish space lasers or some shit. And the MTG temper tantrum was about as epic as you would expect, equally as epic as her "I'm sorry you feel that way, no accountability" apology that she gave prior to her removal.
It's my Jewish space laser.
Pew
pew. And in a final insult to democracy, it is widely reported that after Republicans voted on Wednesday not to strip MTG of her committee seats, she got a standing ovation.
I'm sorry. That is so gross. In what world does this woman who peddles in gross conspiracy theories have a seat at the table in the context of education in any capacity? I mean, it's astounding to me. And
I'm an American.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. All right, Jennifer, you can bring us on to that's all it for MTG. So Liz Cheney kept her seat. MTG didn't keep her seat on the Education Committee to talk about Jewish space lasers, flat Earth, and how school shootings are false flags. And she still has yet to identify any blood-drinking Dems, and I don't understand why her Q supporters aren't holding her feet to the fire on that promise. She told us to go find us some blood drinkers, damn it.
Yeah.
Hallelujah! Holy shit!
Okay. On to me. We're in impeachment. So on Monday night, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina threatened to call in the FBI as a witness during the impeachment trial if Democrats call witnesses. So don't call any witnesses at a trial, or Lindsey Graham going to call in the FBI. Graham stated, quote, "If you open up that can of worms, we'll want the FBI to come in and tell us about how people actually pre-planned these attacks and what happened with the security footprint at the Capitol," end quotes. Going on to say this would provide a sufficient defense for Trump that the insurrection happened outside of his actions. Please, Lindsay, please actually keep one of your promises. Bring in the FBI.
I really wish we can't play this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. We had this clip before. We figured out that was the clip getting us knocked off the air. Then we would have to file, and then they would be like, "Oh, we're sorry, you actually can use that clip," and so I don't play it anymore. But the button would be so perfect for their story. It is interesting to me that Lindsey Graham has said nothing after he said this stupidity. I have a feeling that Trump's lawyers were probably like, "Dude, stop helping."
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, House Democrats asked Trump to testify in his impeachment hearing, and the former president said he would not, calling the hearing itself unconstitutional. Jennifer, this is a departure from his previous views on people who plead the Fifth Amendment or refuse to testify, where he has said that people that do that only do that because they're guilty.
Yeah, he's so dumb it ought to be painful, actually. I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay, so the impeachment hearing, round 2, is supposed to start on Tuesday at 9 a.m. Seattle time and continue to 4 p.m. They will run daily for 6 days a week and is believed will be shorter than Trump's first impeachment hearing. We'll be covering it in all of its glory. Please, God, I'm not even religious, but let Trump testify, and following C-SPAN coverage.
That's my view, too. I was like, please testify. We'll have fodder for months if you testify. Our ratings will be amazing if you testify.
I would buy it.
I don't care about clout and ratings, but holy crap, there'll be so much to talk about if he testifies.
Yes.
And we're going to, starting on Tuesday, we're covering the impeachment hearings in all their glory. And I can tell you right now, there's going to be moments where you're just going to be like biting your nails into the edge of your seat. And there's probably going to be other moments where all going to be.
Yep.
I want to go ahead and address the people on the Senate floor with my 5 minutes.
Yes.
I'm going to get to the impeachment in a minute, but the first thing I want to talk about is Jewish space lasers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On Tuesday, pillow pusher, who wrote this? On Tuesday, pillow pusher Mike Lindell went off script, or more likely stayed on his planned script, while he continued to push his debunked stolen election theories during a Newsmax interview about cancel culture. If you're not familiar with Newsmax, they are more right of Fox News. They are less right of One American Network. And Newsmax has been around like as a website. They actually have been around like 25 years or something, and they started a news channel a few years ago. The interview went so off the rails that a Newsmax anchor actually walked off the set. And guess what? We have the clip.
So what happened? What happened with your Twitter account and the company page?
Well, first mine was taken down because we have all the election fraud with these Dominion machines. We have 100% proof. And then when they took it down about 3 weeks ago, and then when I put it back up, my personal, it was a
Mike, thank you very much. Mike, you're talking about machines that we at Newsmax have not been able to verify any of those kinds of allegations. We just want to let people know that there's nothing substantive that we've seen. And let me read you something there. While there were some clear evidence of some cases of vote fraud and election irregularities, the election results in every state were certified, and Newsmax accepts the results as legal and final. The courts have also supported that view. So we wanted to talk to you about canceling culture, if you will. We don't want to relitigate the allegations that you're making, Mike, because we understand where you are. So let me ask you this. Do you think that this should be temporary because it appears to be permanent? Could you make an argument that it is temporary?
What?
Could you make an argument that this could be a temporary banning rather than permanent.
No, I want it to be a permanent because you know what? They did this because I'm revealing all the evidence on Friday of all the election fraud with these machines. So I'm sorry if you think it's not
Mike,
it's real.
can I ask our producers, can we get out of here, please? I don't want to have to keep going over this.
Actually,
we at Newsmax have not been able to verify any of those allegations that you're
Mike, hold on a second. Everybody hold on a second. Mike, hold on 1 second. Let's talk a little bit about just what is happening overall in terms of censorship of...
Trying to cancel out my company and myself. In this country, it's cancel culture.
Give me a minute here, Malcontents. Like it.
Well,
it's one hell of a drug, Jennifer.
Yeah, but we do know the answer now to how batshit crazy you have to be to run off a Newsmax anchor. There you go.
But the name of that anchor was Bob Sellers, and now you know where the line. Yeah, exactly. We know where the line is. All right. Yeah. It's like this just speaks for itself, right?
God. All right. Do you smell something cheap and polyester burning? That might be some Blue Lives Matter flags. Investigators have decided not to charge the Capitol police officer who shot and killed Ashley Babbitt during the Capitol insurrection on January 6, 2021. Babbitt, with a group of others, many of who are now arrested, surprise, surprise, started to breach the doors that led into the House chamber where congressional leaders were still in. And as Babbitt jumped through the broken door, despite multiple warnings from insurrectionists that there were guns and from officers on the other side, she pushed through. She was shot in the neck and fell backwards into the hall, mortally wounded. The before, during, and after were captured by multiple camera angles on both sides of the door in a video compiled by the Washington Post and widely distributed.
Of course, we saw tons of the videos there, right, where they were very upset that the police were doing police things, and a lot of people left the Capitol going, oh, wait a minute, the police actually don't work for us, they just work for the state. Mm-hmm. Welcome to the dark side, ladies and gentlemen, and theys. Oh, wait a minute, Chuds don't believe in theys.
It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
Welcome to the dark side, ladies and gents. Freaking some of the stuff they were saying too, right? Like, we're going to be like Antifa now and get you defunded.
Yeah, okay.
Elle Linwood continues to be in the news for all the wrong reasons. The state of Georgia has announced that the firebrand election fraud conspiracy theory pusher and lawyer is under investigation for... Jennifer, are you ready? He's under investigation for election fraud. In December, Elle Linwood, in correspondence with the WSB Atlanta TV reporter Justin Gray, indicated he had purchased a residence in South Carolina in April and had changed his legal residence to that state. That would mean if he voted in Georgia's election in November, he was violating the very laws he's accusing others with no evidence of violation in the case of the others. When Elle Linwood was asked about the investigation and if he voted not just in November, but also in the January Senate runoff races in Georgia, he had no comment, but he did say he didn't change his legal residence until February 1st. How convenient.
Well, there's that election fraud they've been looking for. Yeah.
Hallelujah!
Oh, boy.
Holy shit!
Oh, this one's good. All right.
Yeah, it's almost a page. There's so much to unpack.
Because she's crazy. Supreme Court Justice's wife, Virginia Ginny Thomas, apologized to Justice Thomas's law clerks for her comments leading up to and after the insurrection. It was reported that Ginny Thomas is under FBI investigation, go figure, she's nuts, and was one of the first people interviewed by agents in the days after the insurrection. Thomas wrote multiple posts on Facebook in support of the events on January 6th. She then wrote a single comment on one post that they were written before the insurrection, then removed the posts. In an email exchange reported by the Washington Post, former Thomas law clerk John Eastman, who spoke at the January 6, 2021 insurrection and is now the former dean of Chapman University's law school, wrote, quote, "Rest assured that those of us involved in this were this are working diligently to ascertain the truth, end quote. In the same exchange, which Jenny Thomas initiated, former clerk Stephen F. Smith wrote back, quote, if by truth you mean what actually happened as opposed to a false narrative, then I agree. I hope that you and everyone on this list agree that the search for truth doesn't in any way justify insurrection, trying to kidnap and assassinate elected officials, attacking police officers, or making common cause with racists and anti-Semites bent on wanton violence and lawlessness, end quote. The exchange shines a light in a concerning set of communications at highest levels of the judicial why is that a hard word to say? Judicial branch of the government.
It sure does. Ginny's ties to far-right organizations, and I stress far-right, not domestic terrorist organizations, but far-right organizations are well-documented and run very, very deep. And I seem to recall, if I get it wrong, Malcontents, go ahead and roast me in the comments, Turning Point USA, that she has previously been very heavily involved with Turning Point USA, but backed away from that, I believe, in 2019.
Yep.
Okay, Parler CEO, or we can say now former CEO, was fired by the board of directors with no notice and no severance. John Matze said he was given no reason for the firing and went on a few days later to accuse the board of trying to silence and censor him. Metzi claims he urged the board for stronger moderation and they pushed back, which is completely contrary, Jennifer, to what he was saying prior. Matzi also claimed this site would be up and running again by the end of January. It'll be a week and a few hours past January. His site's not up and running, and the board's making it sound like it's not going to be up and running anytime soon. I'm sure John will find another job in the Trump organization or something like that. But John, a little advice, get your paychecks up front, buddy. Get them up front.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, the first Black Secretary of Defense in United States history, has ordered a full military stand down over the next 60 days to tackle white nationalism and anti-government extremism in the ranks. Unlike the nation's 17,000 police forces that have autonomy, the military command and control structure makes it easier to identify problems and move order through the ranks. No details of what the stand down will look like or how issues will be addressed have been made, but at least they're freaking doing something.
Nathan, thank you so much for commenting on our high production value. We really appreciate it. We're actually broadcasting on 5 channels, and sometimes on a channel there's 5 people watching, and there's literally 1,000 people watching on another channel. But we do appreciate the comment on the production value. And on the subject of production value, when Seattle police want to make national news, they go all in. In a move that makes Joey Wiesner look like a member of the deep state, a 6th Seattle police officer is under investigation for potential involvement in the insurrection. The latest officer under investigation came forward on their own, but there is no information on what prompted them to come forward on their own at such a late date. They're under OPA investigation. Joey, in a live stream made just a couple of days after the insurrection, or maybe even like on the, I can't quite remember like when it was, but it was just a couple of days after, misspoke and said that 6 were under investigation when there was 2. He actually wrote an apology that night because Joey follows the same ethos and standards that we do of like truth and accuracy is really important in the world. And, you know, Joey, we don't know. Looks like you had the inside track on the story, and we totally love you for it, man.
Wow. 6. That's a lot more than 2. I wonder how many you ended up with.
Jennifer, by the way, you were also called rich. You're a rich white person. Congratulations.
I am?
Because the production value is so high.
I'm a rich white person?
Yes.
Yeah. You should tell that to my parents or my children or the people that pay my bills or the 3 jobs I work or whatever. But good on you, pal, for thinking I'm rich. Voting tech company Smartmatic, which was only used in Los Angeles County in the 2020 election using a custom solution built for the city, has sued Fox News. Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell for $2.7 billion over the disinformation campaign. Despite continued claims that Smartmatic voting machines flipped votes for Trump to Biden and were manipulated by foreign sources, the machines were only used in the very blue county of Los Angeles, also a city, which makes the accusation preposterous out of the gate. The lawsuit also named Lou Dobbs, Maria Bartiromo, and Janine Pirro of intentionally lying about Smartmatic in an effort to mislead the public into the false belief that the 2020 presidential election was stolen from former President Donald Trump. It was not stolen. He just lost.
And continuing on that story, Lou Dobbs, the top-rated host on Fox Business, which isn't, say, on the subject of only 7 people watching on YouTube. Thank you for setting that up for us. I love that. We not saying a whole lot, was fired abruptly on Friday. Dobbs will continue to draw his salary while being taken off the air, and at 75 years old is not expected to land at another network. Interestingly, Bartimolo and Pirro still have jobs, but there are 2 key differences. Bartimolo and Pirro appear on Fox News, not Fox Business, and as it was reported, Dobbs was advertiser poison, and his show was a net revenue loser for the network. I guess money really does talk over at Fox News.
That's a big shocker. Also in Bizarro Land, Network One America Network, or OAN, which was tricked in the latest Borat movie to allow Borat's fictional daughter to attend a press briefing at the White House, is running a Mike Lindell-funded documentary on election fraud all weekend long. There's one caveat to this. OAN is running a 90-second disclaimer before the, quote, mockumentary, stating they have no skin in the game and that it is not supported by the network, which of course begs the question, why air it in the first place?
Because it's one of those things, not it, but we aired it. So we get to keep the big lie going. Goebbels is smiling in hell at all of this.
Oh,
totally.
Yeah.
I've had no idea of this thing called social media, but I like it very much.
Yes.
Video has emerged from January 6th of Roger Stone, just hours before the insurrection started, flanked by members of the Oath Keepers outside a Washington, D.C. hotel. Stone is deeply involved with the Proud Boys. He's a former Trump ally and a supporter of the big lie, as we just talked about. Stone vehemently denies any involvement in the insurrection and says he never left the hotel room on January 6th, other than for his photo op for the Oath Keeper bodyguards. Members of the Oath Keepers are known to act essentially as his private security firm. And Roger Stone's name kind of comes up in the Venn diagram, or it's getting close to looking like the Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia diagram of everything that's connected.
Big shocker there too, right?
Yes.
So, BuzzFeed News reported that the Trump Organization tried to negotiate a 40% stake in Parler over the summer in exchange for exclusively posting on the now defunct platform. The talks stalled over the summer, but emerged again in November after it became clear Trump had no legal path to gain re-election. Former Trump campaign manager Brad Parscale raised the idea to Trump of taking an ownership stake in Parler during a meeting last year at the White House. The deal reportedly fell apart after the January 6th insurrection, and Parler was shut down by Apple, Google, AWS, and basically every other vendor that supported the alternate social media platform.
This is scripted, but it's this was not on purpose in the way this all connected in. This is another one where this is right out of the Nazi playbook from the 1920s. It is right out of it. Because one of the things after the failure of the beer hall putsch, and Hitler was like, okay, I can't take over the country through violence, so I'm going to have to take it over by winning hearts and minds and propaganda. They actually went out and started buying newspapers up so that Goebbels could go and spread the big lie, the big lie, the big lie. And if you do, you don't have to be a history major for this. You don't even have to be a World War II buff for this. You could just do an hour of freaking reading, and I don't mean on Google, like a book.
Yes.
Or watch a good documentary. There's actually a couple of really good documentaries on this that have come out in the last couple of years. And when you look at that playbook, the big lie, it is being played out in this country right now. We are in this bizarro, we really are at 1923 or 1924 right now.
Yeah, so I'm just going to say as a historian, since the inception of the nation, the media has been used as a tool to push out propaganda. It happened during the revolution in order to get people to come to the side of the colonies. And so they basically ran all of this stuff about how the British would allow for pan-Indian and pan-slave alliances. You saw it in the 1800 election when they basically said, hey, Thomas Jefferson is dead and Madison is a hermaphrodite. So this has like been consistently used throughout history because it's effective.
Yep, exactly.
Sidney
Sidney Powell has maintained a lower profile up until this week, and she seems to be furiously trying to maintain her ability to practice law. Her legal team made a filing on Friday in her battle against Michigan, arguing that she and her team should not face sanctions for their unfounded allegations because, among other reasons, they can prove that the unfounded allegations are provable. This is despite the fact that every one of her cases were thrown out, and she has yet to provide one shred of proof, and we are still waiting. Let's face it, y'all are still waiting for the Kraken. Where's the Kraken? The only Kraken is the Kraken in her assin.
Oh, God.
Okay, this is the point. Mods and admins, we're going to give it like 1 minute, and then I say you can close out the poll after we do the first arrest, and then you can go and let us know what the winning story is in the comments. I'll try to see it go by, and we'll let it know sometime in the arrests. And Jennifer, I think you get the first arrest.
Oh, yay. We had talked about Texas florist Jenny Chud. Sorry, Jenny Cud.
It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
Who was arrested and facing a laundry list of charges for her involvement in National Insurrection Day. Well, Ms. Cud went before a judge asking permission to leave the country to go on a prepaid Mexico pro-business retreat with her employees. Cud isn't allowed into Washington, D.C. due to her actions and can't leave the state of Texas. The Trump-appointed judge, Trevor McFadden, a member of the Federalist Society, God help me, who is overseeing her case, well, he gave her permission to go on a heinous display of white privilege. Excuse me while I choke down the vomit that's coming up into the back of my mouth.
Oh, it's so friggin' gross. Mexico, you can keep her.
Please.
We want to trade her for like 10 hardworking individuals who would like some good opportunity in this country, and you can keep her. And she could have her florist business there.
Yeah.
Please? All right, mods, admins, you can go ahead and let us know what's the winning story. We had reported on the arrest of Troy Faulkner from Ohio previously, but more information is coming out since his arrest. Turns out that Faulkner not only bragged about his exploits on social, said that Antifa and BLM had nothing to do with the insurrection because they didn't, but he called them pussy asses. But he wore his friggin' work jacket with company name and logo emblazoned across the back during the insurrection. This is how you know Antifa wasn't behind it, because even the dumbest protester among insurrectionary anarchists isn't this feckin' stupid.
Oh, damn, Troy. Damn. Okay. Ethan Nordian, a.k.a. Rufio Panman of Washington State and Proud Boy, who was filmed getting pepper sprayed in the face at Back the Blue Spog rally, was arrested for his involvement in the January 6, 2021 insurrection. Nordian led the Proud Boys to the Capitol in what appears to be a planned assault and led a group that moved on the pedestrian barricades that were barely defended by the Capitol officers. In the video captured of that incident, one female officer appears to be badly injured by the group. Nate Gowdy, local photographer, talked to Malcontent News about his conversation with Nordian on January 6th in our interview with us, and I believe
normally the Proud Boys wear they have their trademark black polos with white trim. There is not one of those to be seen on January 6th, and the Proud Boys had telegraphed their intentions ahead of time, saying they had planned to be incognito, even wearing black and trying to mimic the black look of Black Bloc. I can see why they maybe did that, because they didn't want to be labeled as Proud Boys, perhaps, with what they were intending to do. But they did have shirts that said Enrique Tarrio did nothing wrong. At one point I asked the leader, which was Rufio, I'm sure you've encountered him here in Seattle. I think he's one of the local Proud Boys from Vancouver, Washington, or wherever he's from. He was leading them, and Enrique's absence, and I asked him, is there a quote? I took your photo. Is there something you want to say? For words to put with the photo, pair with the photo. And he said all he wanted to say was "back the yellow."
Gross. In another stunning display of white privilege, QAnon shaman Jacob Chansley is being moved to a different jail so that he can be fed a diet of organic food. Chansley held a 9-day hunger strike and has lost 20 pounds. Dude's committed, but before the court gave in to his whim, Judge Joyce Lambert, who made the decision, is a Reagan appointee who has been on the bench since 1987. It is worth noting that Lambert's landmark cases have all leaned towards liberal causes. Most notably, he ordered the 6,000-page CIA torture report that Dianne Feinstein ordered created not to be destroyed. He also sided with indigenous peoples over the Department of the Interior for mismanaging a trust intended for multiple nations' financial benefit, particularly the Lakota, Dakota, Nakota, Ogallala, Rosebud, Cheyenne, aka Sioux Nations. In 2005, in a court ruling, he called the Department of Interior racist. And in a legal ruling, the Department of Interior successfully petitioned to have him removed off of that same case in 2006. He's a complicated dude.
Okay, so here's my, excuse me, I'm going to say the F word. Here's my fucking thing with this. So this asshole is a domestic terrorist. So why isn't he be given the same treatment that those at Guantanamo Bay were given and force-fed when he decided he did not want to eat? Right. Why is he allowed to exercise this fucking privilege? And then he goes on, it gets worse, because he goes on to talk about how organic food is part of his spirituality and shamanic lifestyle. He's not a shaman. He's culturally appropriating. He's a goddamn white dude in a headdress and some paint.
And by all reports, like, the court wants to do a mental competency hearing him and all, because by all reports, he is batshit crazy.
Ugh. Okay, sorry, I won't swear again.
Okay, I got to hit the F-bomb buttons. I live for that right now. So, all right, you get the next one.
I live back. Okay, Gabriel Agustin Garcia was arrested weeks ago, but the information was just released. Garcia is connected with the Proud Boys and is charged with 3 counts of disorderly conduct. Garcia has already been released and is on home detention.
I wonder if Brandy Cruz is going to be doing a divide rant about how all of these people are out and not being held in jail like she does about protesters in Seattle.
Yeah, right.
Good, Brandy.
Shut. Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
Jeffrey Grace of Washington State was arrested at his home and charged with one criminal count for his insurrection participation. An informant tipped off the FBI. Grace claims he went with his son on January 6th, Jennifer, you're going to love this, on a sightseeing tour of the city. He got separated and found himself following a crowd into the rotunda at the Capitol. He then said he tried to pick up some items that had been knocked over and then decided to leave. Grace was pictured as the man behind the other man who is walking off with Nancy Pelosi's podium. Talk about being at the wrong place at the wrong time for your Capitol tour. I wonder if Lauren Boebert was actually showing him around at the time.
Oh, Lauren. You know how I just love her. Love her. All right. Zachary Jordan Alam, who was the man who smashed the door that Ashley Babbitt jumped through, was arrested after a family member tipped off the FBI. Alam hails from Pennsylvania and was seen in multiple videos wearing a fur hat over what appears to be a red mega baseball cap that pokes out and a Proud Boys style t-shirt. Alam was filmed screaming, quote, "Fuck the blue."
This is written.
Before reaching the door to the speaker's lobby, the final point before the House chamber itself.
We've actually had multiple people message. I've had multiple people message me asking like if this dude had been arrested and how come he hadn't been arrested, because he played such a pivotal role in that 60 to 90 seconds that led up to Ashley Babbitt's death, which at the end of the day is a death of her own making. Oh, I was hoping I was hoping you would get this. I'm going to give this one to you.
Okay. Oh, God.
This is one of your favorite people.
Jenna, are we really? I think we should interview her. Jenna Ryan of Texas, my favorite Tinder girl. The real estate agent who documented her private jet insurrection flight is the gift that keeps on giving. If you forgot about Ryan, she posted the before, during, and after. Would talk to anyone who asked and said she deserved a pardon from then President Trump, which she never got. I'm so excited about this, I can't even talk. Well, it turns out that Jason Lee Hyland and Catherine Schwab, who were on the plane with Ryan, are now both arrested. Ryan stated that she went on the private plane trip in hopes of hooking up with a cute guy, but that he picked someone else. Womp womp. Well, I don't think it's a big game of connect the dots to figure out the cute guy was Hyland and the other woman was Schwab. Hyland claims he didn't want to go into the Capitol, but was funneled in. It's funny how you just all are there and accidentally get in the Capitol taking shit. And when he asked a police officer if it was okay, he was told to go in. Schwab is claiming that she was pushed into the Capitol by the crowd and never intended to enter. All I know is the company that they rented the private jet from should probably inspect it with a woods lamp. Gross.
May the Schwartz be with you. See, I had to give you that one because then I could do the Jewish joke.
Okay.
Peter Schwartz, may the Schwartz be with you, of Pennsylvania, was arrested for bear macing police officers during the insurrection. The FBI got a tip. It's amazing how this is working. Who was then identified by an Owensboro, Pennsylvania police officer, because it turns out that Schwartz, may the Schwartz be with you, is really well known by the police department, as he is a halfway house resident in Owensboro on 2 years of parole. Not only is he now facing 4 charges, including 3 felonies, he has 3 outstanding criminal cases in Pennsylvania, including a threat to kill a woman in 2019. I have a feeling that Mr. Schwartz isn't going to be seeing too much of the light of day for a long time.
No. These names. William Mary Jr. of Missouri was arrested after he outed himself on social media. Pictures appeared of the maskless Mary. Sounds like a really bad, superhero. Anti-superhero. Maskless Mary holding part of the Speaker Pelosi's nameplate while in the Capitol. Several people reported him to the FBI because, of course, Mary, through his lawyer, said he hopes, quote, one day being able to get past this.
It's like that editorial cartoon with Guy Fawkes that we had put up on the site earlier this week, right? Well, you didn't actually blow up the parliament, so we're going to let it go this time.
Yeah.
Also arrested out of Missouri, Paul Westover was charged with 4 counts for his role in the insurrection, including a felony account of impeding law enforcement officers. Part of the conditions of his release includes a fate that people in his shoes hate. Jennifer, he has to turn in all of his guns.
Womp, womp, womp. Whew. Yeah.
Ladies, he may be single.
Hot. Don't tell me things like that, David. Is he going to take me to his liberal, his liberal freedom palace?
You're going to have to go back and watch what... I want to take him to my liberal freedom palace.
Especially now that it's a gun-free zone. Hot.
We need more men! Keep pushing! Keep pushing!
I'm trying to stay composed here, okay? Rachel Powell of Pennsylvania was arrested, and her arrest has likely closed the chapter on questions of Colorado Representative Lauren Boebert's mother. Powell, who was more than a passing resemblance to Boebert's mother, was caught on video using a bullhorn giving tactical information to insurrectionists on January 6th. Through a broken window. Powell is a single mother of 8 and faces multiple felony counts. In videos recorded at the Capitol, she's seen carrying and using a makeshift battering ram to break windows and telling other domestic terrorists to break another window. She has admitted to her role at the Capitol, but says she was not working with any group. This is completely ironic because single mothers with children are not people that Republicans give a flying fuck about.
Oh, thank you so much, because and I'm glad actually you read that, because honestly, I think if it came to me, I was going to say, Jennifer, you got to read this one because it could get misconstrued if I read it. And I do want to say, we are not calling out single parents. I was actually a single parent once upon a time. So we were in no way calling out single parents. We are no way calling out people that have 8 kids. But as Jennifer pointed out, we will call out the hypocrisy of the Republican Party and so-called family values and their view on people like single mothers and who would be raising questions as such was, well, who exactly was watching your 8 kids while you were trying to overthrow the government?
Yep, exactly.
Friggin' chuds.
Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
We saw your votes, and we saw it go by, mods and admins. So the story that they picked is talking about the shooting down in Vancouver. And we will unpack that a little bit more. But with that, we got one more arrest, Jennifer. Say hello to arrest number 181. I think we've reported all 181. Dennis Sidorsky of Virginia was accused of 4 criminal counts in his involvement in the insurrection. Sidorsky is probably best known of a picture taken of him taking a selfie of himself because, of course, in the Capitol wearing a sweatshirt with no mask on, by the way, with the words, American supremacist.
Yeah. Wow.
One thing that's jumped out at me is because we've been doing these arrests, we've been reading off all of, the states and all, and it's logical, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, right? Because that's you get in your car and drive. But you don't hear a lot like Nebraska, South Dakota, right? Or, even Idaho. There was like the 1 or 2 in Idaho right out of the gate. It's interesting to me because you think of these as these deeply red states.
Yes.
And yet it doesn't seem like there was a whole lot of participation from those states.
Yeah. Sorry, I was looking up an update on our shooting and my phone was going off. Yeah, I don't know. These people are getting, no.
See, he's not totally deaf. Yoda is 17, y'all, so it's actually really impressive he could hear the squeaky pig.
Yes, it is.
What's that?
Yes, it is.
So just a reminder, that was our insurrection update, and Monday will probably be our last insurrection update because we'll be moving to the impeachment trial. And then the story, we'll see what the fallout is. But Monday will probably be our last, and we'll continue to do arrests because we love the arrests. We love them.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the story that they wanted us to unpack and talk about a little bit more is out of Hazadell and the second police shooting there in about 3 months. This is a tough one to unpack a little bit because there is like no information.
Well, just looking up a little bit, he is still in critical condition and there are 4 deputies on leave for the role in his shooting. Beyond that, there's not a lot. Of course, we talked about the outcome does not look promising. But I'm really curious to know how many people were there for that arrest, why 4 people are on leave. I really am. I think we just need to continue following this because there's something interesting going on here, and it's not.
Yeah, because what usually happens in these situations, right? Well, we drag the suspect through the mud. We saw that with Peterson Jr. Right? They made, he's drug and he had a prior criminal record, and we're not hearing that with him. 30 years old. And if there was something, the chuds would already be screaming this from the rooftop about, and like, street executions aren't legal in the United States. There's this document called the Constitution that you pretend to say that you like. That's why you supported the insurrection, because the Constitution says we could do it. Yeah, well, the Constitution is also very clear on things like street frickin' executions. And they're not legal in this country. So, but there's nothing, right? There's no eyewitnesses. There's people who heard it. There's one individual I know was quoted who was basically saying they're in their house. They heard a gunshot. They heard a crash. They came out. There was a car that was crashed in the yard, and that's all they saw. And so they don't know anything. And the police have not come out at this point and said, as they did again with her, well, he pulled a gun on us and he did all of these things. And Jennifer, historically, when the police get real quiet on these things like this, because we're now 72 hours past, it's like we got to get our story straight before we come out with the story, because the story's not very straight. But amazing what we learned in Florida is try to hug a fellow officer against your will and you get your happy ass fired like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. And so it looks like it was a routine traffic stop. And why were there 4 deputies at a routine traffic stop? And yeah, apparently one fired their weapon, hitting the driver of the vehicle. The comments, if you go to Clark County Today and some of the Clark County websites that have this posted as a story, are absolutely atrocious. That gives you a kind of a indication of the demographic and political leanings in that area. But yeah, my guess is if there was something that they could latch onto to justify the shooting, they would have found it by now. And tried
it just seems like we got to get our story straight.
Yeah.
It's like the story's not straight.
Yeah.
That's what it just feels like, because there's nothing coming out. And I'm sure, again, there hasn't even been a press conference about it, right? And typically, or, there's been nothing. And my understanding is we've learned the name through the family, not through any, confirmation through the family. And again, I want to stress, the family has said to the NAACP, they don't want any protests. They don't want any recognition. They are in shock. They are heartbroken. They are confused. And they are pleading with people to just let them grieve for now. And they will move on to the next phase as they get more information. And the family's basically also being said, we're not being told jack shit either.
Yeah, no, yes. So basically the family released the identity first, and then they had to come out after the fact and be like, yes, this is who it was. So the family is actually doing the work of the police department, who knows clearly that they've messed up and have already suspended all 4 deputies that were involved in that traffic stop.
The last thing I think that's all we can unpack on that story. And other than that, of course, we'll continue to monitor that story that comes out. And I do hope that everybody in the activist and the protest community, from the far left insurrection anarchists to the, the moms, what were they called in Portland? The yellow shirted moms. They're really not around anymore either. But I really hope that everybody respects the wishes of a black family that is suffering from crime that's happened against their black son.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I'm going to flip the camera for me a little bit, Malcontents, because I want to talk to you about something that's a serious topic and something that I'm pretty hot under the collar about. And if you bear with us for the 2 hours of the show tonight, I've been saying I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about this. And if you've been on for all 2 hours, you know that this topic is about transphobia and transgender. We noticed something this week. We noticed something that was disturbing to us. And what we noticed was anytime that we posted something that involved transgender rights on our Twitter channel, we would lose Twitter followers. And so we actually ran an experiment this week. And if you kind of look on our Twitter feed, you're going to find that we ran multiple stories on transgender rights, which is a pillar of what this organization is here for. We are here to amplify BIPOC and LGBTQIA plus voices. I am probably preaching to the choir right now, but you all are going to have to indulge me when I preach to the choir. If you're transphobic, this is not the news channel for you. If you're transphobic and you want to educate yourself and try to understand it, you're in the right place. But if you're transphobic and every time we talk about it, you're rolling your eyes or you're just like, oh my God, here he goes again, we don't want you. We're not clout chasers. That's not what we're here for at all. We have trans people on our staff, people that I respect, people that do amazing work for this organization. And our trans staffer had an icon made for them and has had to endure unspeakable comments that they are so used to at this point that it just rolls off their back. But they shouldn't. And a slap in the face to them is a slap to all of us. Every single staffer that works at Malcontent News, we're all volunteers. And for everyone who is a malcontent and believes in these values, it shouldn't matter on gender identification how somebody identifies. It shouldn't matter what is in somebody's pants or under their skirt. It certainly shouldn't matter what consenting adults do among consenting adults and how they want to behave and how they want to explore their sexuality, as long as it is consensual. And yet apparently for some of you, it is an issue. I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated as the gray-haired Jewish white guy from the burbs whose first introduction to gay culture was the movie Airplane and Johnny in the Tower. Like literally my first introduction to, well, that guy's really funny, but he has a funny kind of voice and he's acting kind of in feminine behavior. What's up with that? My second introduction to gay culture was my mother talking about her gay hairdresser. I don't understand. Why am I the one up here? Why is this my job? And I've talked about transphobia among the protest community, and I've witnessed it firsthand, and I've dealt with it firsthand. Enough. The trans community has the shortest lifespan of any community in the United States, even shorter than a Native American that lives on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. A trans black person has an average life expectancy under 40 years. If you're out in the street chanting Black trans lives matter, those words better not pass your lips if you don't mean it. And this doesn't just apply to men, because there was an ugly incident that happened in New York City this week where women were putting up anti-trans pink stickers up, and they were confronted. And you know what? When they were confronted by somebody in the trans community, they called them misogynist, which is like quasi playing the racist card in the backwards direction to make it go away. If you're a woman and you're threatened by the trans community because I don't know why, and maybe I don't understand it because I'm a man, you got to be kidding me. I'm frustrated and I'm heartbroken because this is our community. The enemy is in our house. That's strong words. But the enemy's in our house. If I wake up tomorrow and we've lost 500 followers over this, I don't give a fuck. I don't want you following us.
This is written. This is written.
If you want to educate yourself, if you want to explore, if you want to be, if you can look in the mirror tonight and go, you know what? It does. It bothers me and I don't understand why, but I'm willing to at least explore it. Stick around because we're going to keep talking about it. Whether you leave it, and I get it. I'm probably preaching to the choir, but I have a feeling, seeing how anytime we post this stuff, we see the numbers go right down. So I got a feeling I may be talking to a couple of people right now. And if you go, how do I know if he's talking about me? If I just pissed you off, then you know I'm talking about you. And that's it, because there's no room for it. And Renee, I love you, and I love the work that you do.
You're amazing, Renee.
See what you don't have to put up with, Yoda. Yoda wants to run for president if he's still alive in 2024. What he told me his platform is everybody has to sniff each other's butts to say hello. Everybody has to eat 7 times a day. You could pee on the floor anywhere that you want. And you get to sleep 16 hours.
I take the sleeping 16 hours. The rest is questionable.
All right, Malcontents. After that, and I got that off my chest. You got any questions for us? We could do a short little Q&A session. Also, mods, admins, if there's questions that went flying by that we didn't see, you can go ahead and let us know, hey, there were questions that went by and you didn't see them, and spam those hearts if you liked what I had to say. I see lots of hearts getting spammed in the feed, which is good. And again, I feel like I was probably preaching to the choir on a lot of that. So I know it takes about 20 seconds for that ask for the questions to get out there. Jennifer, my arms are so freaking tired. He's just...
How much does he weigh?
We've upped his food because he was pretty skinny. He's been right, and we've kind of shifted some medications on, and it's really working. He's gaining weight. He needed to get... He wasn't dangerously skinny, but it was kind of like if he ever got sick, he had nothing in the gas tank.
Yeah.
And he's gotten heavier, and I'm not out with pole cam a whole lot, so...
Yeah.
The forearms aren't what they were a few months ago.
Yeah. He doesn't look super like big, but yeah, after a while it's like carrying dead weight, you know?
What are we going to talk about? Yeah, we haven't talked about it, and this is on my fault. And I'm going to tell you, Kimberly, why we haven't talked about it. Because I only learned today that it was a second officer that had committed suicide. It was never clear to me that there was a second officer. I always thought, sincerely, when I looked at this, I just was like, oh, okay, they're still talking about... The story that I read made it read like they were confirming that the first officer that killed themselves had actually killed themselves. And I actually did not connect until about 3.5 hours ago that there was a second suicide of an officer related to the events that happened at the Capitol. And we will talk about it. And a matter of fact, Kimberly, we'll make a point to talk about it on Monday. We will put it in the Insurrection update. Promise. Great question. I saw the headline on that, Dora. I don't know, Jennifer, I don't know if you know anything about this one. I didn't read the story, but I saw the headline. There was an individual who gained access to a plane at Andrews Air Force Base, which was that's where Air Force One is. Well, and when we say Air Force One, technically any airplane that has the President of the United States in it gets the designation of Air Force One. So the President of the United States could be in a Civil Air Patrol Cessna 182, and the call sign for that Civil Air Patrol Cessna 182 would be Air Force One. Of course, if the President was in a Civil Air Patrol Cessna 182, something really friggin' messed up has happened.
Yeah, I made a note on my whiteboard about those two stories so we can remember to follow up on them on Monday.
I actually have a funny story about breaching security at Andrews Air Force Base. So when I was a little kid, my sister is retired Air Force. She was a pilot. Her first station was at Andrews. She flew T-39s. Think of a T-39 essentially as like a Lear jet. So she flew VIPs around the nation, and that was her first gig. And she brought the entire family down to the base at Andrews Air Force Base. And there is a fire station that is right there that is parked outside of the 747 Air Force One. And they lost track of me, and I was 11 at the time and just a curious little kid. And I just walked out onto the tarmac at Andrews Air Force Base in a beeline right to Air Force One. And my sister got a very, very stern talking to by some nice gentlemen with rifles about how, I don't belong on the tarmac and they need to keep a better eye on me.
Oh, boy.
True friggin' story.
Wow.
Was not a career-limiting move for my sister.
Something you'll never forget.
No, it's something I won't forget. It was a really freaking... I mean, come on, you're 11 years old. There's this big 747, and it's running. The engines are running, and there's literally like no one around. You're like, oh, cool. Look at this big air. It's not like I walked right up to the wings or something, right? But I crossed. There's a line. I crossed the line, right? I was on the tarmac. And then I was told kind of afterwards, I was probably 15 seconds from getting thrown on the ground.
Oh, boy.
Courtney, I've always been a troublemaker. Always. And I will always be a troublemaker. Any other questions? Info on the homeless sleeps in Olympia. Oh, good. Callie has an update on that. Thank you so much on that, Callie, for sharing that. It looks like, is that it, mods, for questions? Did we miss anything? because we're way over time. I don't know how this became 2 freaking hours again, Jennifer. I really don't.
We talk a lot.
We really tried to hustle this up tonight.
I know. It's all right. I think it's good.
Okay, I'm getting told that's it for questions. So, all right. So from Jennifer, myself, and Yoda the Wonder Pug. Good night, everybody. If you're gonna watch the Super Bowl tomorrow, watch it from friggin' home.
Yeah,
please. And Jennifer, I'm pulling for Tampa Bay.
Me too, because I used to tutor for UW Athletics, and some of the guys ended up on there. So, and I can't, in good conscience, celebrate the Chiefs. So, yeah.
People that know have watched the show know why I'm pulling for Tampa Bay. The Patriots still may be my team, but if Tom Brady can get ring number 7, quite frankly, getting to his 10th Super Bowl outside of the Patriots, outside of Belichick, in what was a team that was advertised as a building year with relatively low expectations at the start of the season, I think we could put the whole he's a cheater thing to bed. But I think if he gets ring 7, it's really put to bed at that point.
Yeah.
So anyway, ideal gas law. Look it up. All right, Malcontents, with that Malcontent out. Jennifer, have a good night.
You too. See you Monday.
See you Monday.
Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live, as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals, including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
You fit the profile. You're the malcontent. Nobody wants to hear the nonsensical ravings of a loudmouth malcontent.
Fuck you! You are the biggest hypocrite on the face of the planet.
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.